Okay. Start by just giving yourself a few moments to settle in, thinking about your basic seated posture. So if you can be a little bit forward in the chair, do that. Tilting your weight a bit forwards to get your feet to take some of the weight of your body, about a third of your weight. And just try and have a sense for how you feel supported. If you find that your back's aching, sit back. You won't get as much of a feel for what's happening in your feet and your legs from that position, but rather that than straining in the back. But try not to sit all the way back. Most chairs, when you sit back, will have you leaning backwards slightly. And what we want to try and do is to get a posture, not exactly upright, because when you go forwards to feel the weight in your feet a little bit, you do actually tilt forwards. But it means if you imagine this square, which is formed by your feet and your hips at the corners, your head comes more towards the middle of that square. It won't reach the middle. So we feel that we're supported by our feet a little bit, obviously by our hips and the chair. We want to feel that our back supports the front of our body. So trying not to put your belly in or tighten in your chest. These things can be quite common habits. And as you get more used to this posture and you're able to get that feeling of just releasing some of the tightness and stiffness in big muscles in the back and shoulders and so on, an increasing sense of the support that comes from within the body. And it's always good to take some time to remind ourselves of that. Even if you've felt it before, you have a skeleton that supports your body, that gives your body shape. So for instance, when you manage to sort of like release tightness in your shoulders drop, probably only for a few moments to begin with. You still have a rib cage, you still have a chest cavity. And it's good to remind ourselves of that because it's easily overlooked when we get to a point where we think that we need the tightness, we need the tension in the body, especially we don't. We don't need to tighten up to hold ourselves up. And in fact, when we get that feeling of releasing all the way down through our body, gravity works through our body quite freely. Our center of gravity drops, and that dropping of the center of gravity, the rooting down, is one of the key things that makes us more stable as a result of practicing touch. So aligning the body and rooting down are key elements in science. And then rubbing your hands together and the pads of your fingers tapping over your face. Nice light, steady, quite rapid movement. And then over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder, arm. I use the palm of my hand for this bit of it, shoulder, arm. Just notice how your arm vibrates slightly as you tap it. Coming to the upper part. And again, maybe feeling a bit of a vibration in chest, in belly. And I sit back in the chair. And once again, thinking about this feeling of gravity working through your body, pulling you into the ground and allowing that to happen. And when we're in this reclining position, we allow that to happen, but at a certain point it stops because the chair's there. So you can sometimes feel a bit heavier in the chair, and so your chair forms, in a sense, the same function as I was talking about your rib cage earlier. Even so, it's quite a difficult thing to do. We have to sort of, in a sense, reassure ourselves that we are actually going to be comfortably held and supported, because we get so used to the tightness and the stiffness in the body, we get habituated to it, and we just assume that it's necessary. But this allows the soft tissue of your body to release some of that tightness. It becomes more supple or elastic. And so this becomes not just a way of developing stability when we're in the upright stances, and let's not to deny the significance of that. It's very important. But also it means that the actions of the soft tissue, muscles, tendons, ligaments, fascia, and so on, become much smoother and less labored. There's less resistance to movement, less resistance to that sort of gravity, less resistance to the counter movement, because as you drop into the chair, you drop into your hips or whatever, we don't just collapse. So we can surmise that there's a counter movement, an upward movement. And for the movements themselves, the exercises to be able to move without restriction, without fighting against your own body. So coming once again to the upright position, it's the same thing again, and this dynamic quality, gravity going down through your body, and the movement upwards becomes one of the key cycles of movement, cycles of energy that we draw upon for the movements. So rooting down offers you the chance to become more stable. The rooting down is also part of the energetic mechanism that we work with quite deliberately and intentionally in action. Just starting to go through the different areas of the body to loosen up a little bit. Same in your head and stuff. So as we lose some of that tightness in our bodies, and some of it will just go away, some of it will maybe go away and come back and so on. We can't just dispel the habits of a lifetime in a few moments. But as that starts to happen, then we feel as though there's more space for that movement. And when we move in this and all the other movements, what we want to try and do is to let the movement gently fill that space, but not to strain against it. Now bring your hands around, rest them in front of the shoulders, circle your elbows back. Find for the most part that feeling of space begins to expand as we move. Going forwards. And your hands drop down. Just rotating from the shoulders. And then lifting your arms, rotating your fingers to a full circle. So you're winding up fine string or cotton. And back the other way. Now, I'm going to come forward again in the chair. Feeling your weight press down through your hips and your pelvis and those bones at the base of the pelvis, thinking of them as being like the blades of a rocking chair. You just tilt the pelvis forwards, and more of your weight goes into the feet and your legs. Then a gentle push downwards through your feet should be enough to bring you back up. So as you go forwards, there's a bit of the compression in your legs, which then begins to expand, pushing you back. And similarly, lower back and hips and buttocks compressed and then expanding, pushing forwards. Now turn just a little so that more of your weight goes into one leg. The turn is in the center of the body. So we have this combination, weight moving, center of the body turning, and this accounts for much of what we do in all of the exercises. Turn in the other direction. And then circling around. And go back in the other direction. Feeling your weight moving, foot to foot, from foot to hip, from hip to hip. Recognizing that the weight change becomes a real driving force with this movement. And the weight change comes from that sinking down and the resultant push up. You sink into one hip, sink down, it pushes you up, you direct it into the foot or whatever, through the center of the body. So this mechanism is fairly consistent through all of the movements there. Now just sit back and extend one foot, put your heel down, lower your toes, gently push the foot into the floor. Back. Palms in the floor. And then on the other side. The downward movement reduces the upward movement. And that upward movement, the Chinese term is peng, and it's often described, traditionally described as though if you get a block of wood, or we might say these days a ball, and you push it down into water, you immediately feel the buoyancy of the water pushing back up. And if you take your hand away from the block of the wood, it would bob up quite strongly. And that's the feeling of this yang energy. So let your hands drop down to your sides, turn the palms of your hands forwards, sinking into the hips and waiting until you feel the push forwards. And as you go forwards, rotating your arms, sinking into your feet and feeling that rising movement. And essentially your intention is to take that movement to send it either forwards or backwards, depending on where you are. So really focusing for a little while on that mechanism of sinking down and feeling the push back in this a simple exercise, because it's a little bit more subtle as we go through the set. This time, excuse me, this time changing hands facing backwards, fisherman castanet. Tilting forward, your arms following your shoulders through, and then back. One more time going forwards. And this time, imagine the ball underneath your arms, and as you come back, we're just drawing the ball into the chest. So it's a pull on your arms, not a lift of your arms. So that sense of a rising movement from your feet is almost like a wave coming underneath your arms, pushing them up. Expand into your belly, into your chest, and then draining back down to your hips. And then changing again, turning your hands palm in, pigeon spreads its wings. So we have this very consistent dynamic quality amongst others, but just focusing on that for the moment. And as that sort of moves up into the upper part of the body, particularly, so we're able to create patterns. And it's important to realize that your arms are part of that pattern creation rather than part of the generation of the movement. As I said, it does become more subtle than that with time. There's obviously things happening in the upper part of the body which complement this dynamic that I'm talking about, but not replacing it. One more time. Change into pushing wave, keeping your hands in front of your hips. You let your elbows go out just a little bit, and then they come in again as you go forwards, but it's more focused. You're pushing to a particular point. And you could imagine pushing against something. Something on wheels, like kind of these chest of drawers that maybe you're moving across the room, or supermarket trolley or something like that. Give it this slightly stronger feeling, more directed feeling. And once again, just referring your mind back to this feeling within the skeleton, that too has a stronger feeling. So we begin to develop a sense of what we call inner strength. One more time. Now this time, don't push your elbows out, just let the hands come back a little bit, roll into a hollow fist, going forwards and rotating your arms, and then pulling back, turning your hands palm up. Don't just push your arms out, move forwards and let the arms lengthen a little bit, and then pull back. And see how my elbow bend, my elbow coming in towards my hip, and then extending out, but not thrusting right out. And again, a very directed, stronger feel. So this is where we begin to realize the significance of mind and intention. We're still working with that same basic dynamic forwards and backwards, sinking down, feeling the pushback, so on and so forth. We're creating a variety of patterns. People who are more familiar with the set, you may notice a very quick change into the next exercise. You'll recognize the exercise, your mind recognizes it, you have an image of the exercise, and the body begins to flow through that image. Obviously, you need some familiarity with the movements for that to work. One more time. Changing again, open your fingers, turn your hands out, just winding back and in, and once again, press forwards. The hands stay in front of your body. So what we don't want to do is to come back here and bring the hands behind. That loses the mechanical alignment. It's rare that your hands travel far behind your body. We come in, drop the elbows into here, and once again, you're ready to push forwards. Your body expanding. And then the contraction, drawing your elbows in. So again, this subtle mechanisms of movement, expansion and contraction through the upper part of your body are all part of this shaping of that basic energy. Coming back this time, turning the hands, turning the center of the body. Notice how that moves your arms. Rolling the center forwards, swinging across and back, polishing the tail, change direction. Noting the significance of that central area, pelvis, hips, waist, often described as being like the hub of a wheel. When the hub turns, the whole wheel moves. So it becomes a really significant point of focus. It's that part of the body you want to feel is dropping towards the ground, reaching down. It's also that part of the body that takes that movement upwards and guides the shaping, both in physical terms, mechanical terms. Get that sense really easily here, but also it's through the center part of the body that we begin to direct our attention. It's like if you think about a telephone exchange or an internet server, where information comes in to the server and then moves out to its destination. One more time. So this area, the hips and pelvis, the center of the body, becomes a really important and consistent point of focus. We direct our attention into the center. It's that center part of the body we want to put is dropping towards the ground. It's the center part of the body that receives the energy coming upwards and receives the instructions, if you like, the intentions from your mind, and moves the body in the appropriate way. So it's the central hub of the movement. It's also becomes the point that we bring our attention to that sense of just quietening. It's a quiet, still space, like the hub of the wheel sits still in the car or the bicycle, or whatever vehicle you're talking about. And because it's sinking down to the ground, that adds to the sense of stillness. We move in a very centered way, a very grounded way, mind and body language. So it's the blending of these three aspects of Tai Chi, the three treasures of the body, mechanical, physical side of the movement, of mind, of awareness, of attention, and of the movement, the flow, the energy, the momentum that creates the space where Tai Chi and Qigong take place. Think about a Venn diagram, where you have these overlapping circles. You had three of them. When you brought them together, you'd have a space where all three existed. We're not trying to force the body with a kind of mind over matter approach to do things that aren't correct, but at the same time, these are not just casual, random movements. Not suggesting that all we have to do is to think right and everything works out okay, because we still have to deal with the physical issues and so on and so forth. But these three things will interact with each other. They're mutually supportive, mutually beneficial to each other. For the next set of exercises, these are more vertically inclined movements. Just been in a series that are forwards and backwards. So that's alternating between this push up from the feet, push up from the hips, like a wave flowing from hips to feet, and then sinking down, and then the wave comes back. For these movements, we don't go forwards and backwards for the most part, but we try and get that sinking down through both feet and through hips. So you're sinking down, and then you feel the push coming up from both. Almost like if you could imagine you're going to stand up in your chair, you sort of push your feet down into the chair. You push your hips and your bottom, and you push yourself up. So it's that kind of process, a little bit more subtle than that. Just letting your shoulders drop, feeling the weight of your head, sort of almost pressing down on your belly and your pelvis, and then feeling the push up, the spine lengthening a little bit, and then dropping. Now, if I exaggerate, I don't know how well you can see it. If you look at my head, see how my head goes up a little bit, and then down, my spine expanding and contracting. Again, that was exaggerated. Don't force this movement. It's felt more than it is seen. Bring the hands around and rooting down, because the downward movement reinforces the root, but also creates the energy that pushes your arms up and then down. So you've got a ball underneath your arms, pressing the ball down into the water, and then pushing it up. So we could liken the expanding stage to having a ball here in the belly, in the pelvis, that gets compressed and then expands. And when it expands, it doesn't just push upwards. It pushes in all directions. Like you get a ball, you squeeze it, it expands out in all directions. So it reinforces that downward movement, hence the name of the exercise, rooting down. But any kind of extension of any sort in Tai Chi, whether it be upwards or forwards or backwards or sideways or whatever, is always accompanied, in fact, almost preluded by this sense of connection to the ground, the root. So we get into the habit of maintaining the root and everything that is implied by that, stability, the source of energy, the quietness in the mind, and so on and so forth. The rest of the movements come out of that. And turning your hands out, the wild goose, maybe noting how the image of the bird in flight has an effect on the movement. Not this image, one of the other images that maybe we use. When we use an image, our body responds. But if your body doesn't respond, if the image doesn't mean much to you, don't go chasing after it. We use a variety of images. They're there to enhance the movement. Again, people with a bit more experience, you might be thinking to yourself that there's a particular image that you want to investigate and develop. That's fine. But don't be too quick to do that. Sometimes it takes a while for these images to begin to work. And then easing forwards just a little bit to let your hands cross in front of your knees, sit back, push up, expand into the belly, solar plexus, and chest. You may notice if you're comfortable focusing on your breathing, you may notice that your breath just settles into the pattern of the movement. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. Don't force your breath to do anything in particular. But breathing, of course, is another major source of energy for the body as we breathe in the fresh oxygen. We breathe out the stale, stagnant carbon dioxide. So part of this energetic cycle is a matter of pressure energy coming into the body and stale energy leaving, whether that be through the breathing or whether that be through the previous mechanism I talked about, and the sinking down, a releasing feeling. So there's a rejuvenating quality about these movements, and you don't have to have a particular breathing pattern for that to work, just as long as your breath is comfortable. This time, letting your hands drop down, feeling the weight of your arms hanging from the shoulders, pushing up on one side. The intention now is to expand and then contract on one side. Just let your attention rest for a brief moment in your belly, that feeling of sinking down, and then on the other side, feeling the expansion all the way through that side of your body, and dragon touch the stars. And straining your shoulder. And when you get to the top, that means you can just rotate in your shoulder a little bit. There you are plucking something like a tree. And notice how we can bring quality of intention to create a particular movement. In this case, the expansions through one side of the body. One more on each side. Bring your hands to a point in front of that center part of your body. And again, feeling the expansion, this time all the way through on both sides, pushing up and drawing down, pushing in two directions. The next movement, pushing out to the side and back. Never going to the full extent of the movement. Remember that feeling of spaciousness within the body when we release tightness and stiffness. You don't want to stretch to the full extent and lock up, because then we're once again restricting space for that internal. This time, as you push out sideways, you're going to turn. That redirects the direction of your arms. Once again, feeling the significance of the center part of your body, letting your awareness of the movement bring your attention back. The other way, there's just a moment in the center here where you just let things settle. And then facing forwards and pushing out. So pushing in four directions. Make this the final time, pushing out, and as you push out, extend one foot, just rest it on the heel, knee a little bit bent still, and tilt forwards towards that foot. Arms out in front as though you're scooping water up in your arms, and then let your hips drop back, drawing you over and scooping the ceiling, looking at the sky. Being careful not to strain in your back or your shoulders, especially as you come up. Feel your hips dropping back. There's a bit of a push from this other foot. So not straining in your back, not restricting that sense of movement. And coming up very sort of openly, very gracefully. And then rolling your hand into a hollow fist again, and almost the reverse of this movement, this time an upward trajectory. This is grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. Changing over, scooping the sea, and looking at the sky. And then grasping the tiger. That's just preparing to stand, rubbing your hands together and then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder, and your arm. And on the other side. The upper part of the chest. Down to your belly. And importantly, that to stand, the legs, the circulation back in your legs after sitting. Even though we've been using our feet and our legs, they can still stiffen up a little bit. And pushing your heels up. Just working the muscles of your calves and your thighs. And then circling back. And then back. Lovely. To come to standing. As always, it can be interesting to have a chair next to you or something that you can support yourself with. Much of what we do involves releasing the tightening in the body, and that can be surprisingly difficult for all of us. Sometimes having that bit of extra support means that we notice, even if we're quite experienced, we may notice areas that we're still holding tightness. I'm going to move it out the way so that I've got room to do the exercise, but I do sometimes I'll use a wall or something like that for support. Standing with your feet hip width apart and trying to have your weight just a little bit forward and just trying to get that feeling of releasing of tightness in the area of lower back, hips and buttocks. So again, you get that sense of come a bit closer so you can see, and I'll exaggerate slightly. It's just a very slight dropping back, but you'll feel it strongly in the thigh muscles. Once again, this allows that center part of the body to drop, allows gravity to draw through our body. So the same dynamic that we were looking for in the chair, finding a structure that allows that to happen. Then carefully let your hips drop back a little bit more. Don't strain in your knees. And again, feeling the push up. Almost like you were now in water, bobbing up and down in the swimming pool. Bring your hands around and the standing version of rooting down. Pressing the ball down, dropping your hips, feeling your shoulders go down. At the bottom of the movement, turn your hands out, go straight into the wild goose. And then dropping down and then parting the clouds. And just use this simple sequence as a way of becoming familiar with the changes in the upper part of your body. Your legs, your hips doing the same thing. But we begin to understand how each individual movement is mirrored by a unique set of patterns of expansion and contraction within the body. So there are subtle changes from one movement to another, subtle changes from one part of a movement to another quite often. And increasingly, these should become our point of focus, because when we develop our ability to focus our attention clearly, to focus our intentions clearly, the biggest effect of that intentionality is on these small movements. They become building blocks, the bricks and mortar that create the bigger movements. And this is how that mind element really begins to play a role in influencing what's happening physically and energetically within the body. Again, this is not mind over matter. No suggestion here that it's just a case of thinking correctly. But again, it's like that Venn diagram, these three aspects coming together into one. I suppose you could say that we're trying to get to a point where our minds play an equal role to our bodies, but not a dominant one. And then just come to stand. As we saw in the chair, we can use this downward and upward movement and have the intention to guide our weight from one part of the body to another. In the chair, it was from hips to feet, from feet to hips. In standing, we can use it. If you look at this, I can direct it into our front foot, and then I get the sense of sinking down. And when I feel the push up, rather than letting it push me up, which I now don't want it to happen, I let it push me back. So have 1 foot forwards, keep the width of your step, go into your back foot, that feeling releasing in your hip. Just be careful you don't put the strain into your knee. Then when you feel the push, directing it forwards, releasing into the front foot and back. So this too is a major dynamic movement in the body. We're told in Tai Chi, the movement is rooted in the feet, this sinking down, pushing up pattern that I described. Transmitted through the legs, either by what's going up and down as we've just been doing, or through the movement of the weight. So we begin to appreciate the dynamic quality of this, but also becoming increasingly clear, increasingly accurate in our weight transfer. What we don't want to happen is to say go from the front foot and end up going back like that. We want to be very clear where the back foot is and where we want the weight to go. Likewise, going forwards. So in many ways, this is a crucial exercise. When you come into your back foot this time, raise the front toes, just feel your body shift back a little bit more. Looking now to align yourself over 1 foot. Go forwards, push the back knee forward so the heel comes up and you shift a little bit more. Moving to a point where we find that alignment of the body that allows the pull of gravity down through the body over 1 leg. So we started off in the chair with a particular structure that allowed us to recognize that downward movement and then the upward movement. Then we did it on 2 feet, first of the standing exercises. Now we're looking to bring that into the somewhat trickier idea of feeling the alignment over 1 leg. And when we start to get that, that's when we can take a slow step. So we're not looking to balance. We're looking to be stable by allowing the center of gravity to drop by releasing the tightness in the body. These two ideas chase each other around. You release a little bit, you root down more, you feel a little bit more confident. Remember that sense of the confidence in your body's ability to support itself. And with that confidence, we're able to release tightness a little bit more. And to build that confidence again, if I put my hand on the wall, that can help me really sort of get a deep sense of releasing because it feels a bit risky. Now try that on the other side. It's counterintuitive to do this. We tend to, if you think about those times you maybe feel a bit, oh, you almost, stumble around or something like that. The natural instinct is to stiffen up. And that can have a very good short-term effect, but only short-term. And if you're lucky, you go, oh, and there's something there to catch you. But mostly it's thin air around us. This is a much more reliable, much more sustainable way of remaining stable. So, back heel coming up. Take this in stages. Stepping in. And then take a few steps through, forwards or backwards, depending on where you've got the room. Take your time. Better to do 2 or 3 steps slowly and carefully and really feel the potential for that stability than it is to rush at this, do a lot of steps, but not really get the feeling of really feeling stable and grounded in this. Change direction if you haven't done so before. Now, have your right foot forwards. Let's do a few rounds of the standing version of fisherman castanet. Straightforwards movement, literally going forwards and backwards, looking forward so your center's not turning here. So your arms just naturally swing forwards and backwards with you. But this time, as you go from front to back, turn. So you draw your hands across your body now. Notice that the arms swing with a very natural curve. Feeling the expansion from the left side of your body as they swing back, the right side of your body as they swing forwards. And so again, we can build on that, expanding a bit more through the right side of your body, pushes your arms up, you go forwards, you turn, bringing your hands down across the front hip. Turn and expand in the right side and back, creating this figure of 8, sideways figure of 8 movement. Some people like to think of the infinity sign that gets used in science and mathematics sometimes. Whatever shape pleases you, to imagine in front of you, your fingers and your arms are just swinging through, so you're tracing the shape. Good. Shake out. Try those 2 movements with the left foot forwards, just do a few rounds of fisherman castanet to establish basic feel of the movement. Give yourself time to get that sense of sinking down. Don't lose that. Remember, it's really it sort of starts the whole dynamic process. We want that to take place without having to sort of consciously, without having to have that at the front of our mind. We begin to turn. So that releasing in the hips, sinking down, feeling the push up. I sometimes liken to pedaling a bicycle. We don't know if you ride a bike regularly, you don't have to think about pedaling. You just, but you know that you're doing it. And then expanding more in that rear side, the right side of your body. Once again with the figure of 8 movement. Not straining in your shoulders, not lifting up. Your center of gravity is sinking through the floor. Turn the front foot out a bit. Again, you can either go forwards or backwards. This time you go into one leg, and as your arms come up, so you bring the empty foot in, take the step, and going forwards. You may find, again, take this nice and gently, and only if it's appropriate, be able to just raise your knee a little bit. You can hips and pelvis level. So if you find that you're kind of tilting over to do that, best to leave it to begin with. And then going back. And bring your feet parallel. Shake out. To go back to your chairs, that last bit with raising the knee, quite often what we do is we lean over and we struggle to bring the knee up. And this is where it can be really helpful to have some support from something. I did this when I started doing exercises like that. I still do sometimes. I'm holding on to the chair and I'm just experimenting with this movement, raising my knee. Maybe you can't see it, I'm doing soft face. Oh, there you go. You can see it now. So I'm supported, which means I can just really investigate what's going on here. How am I bringing the leg up? Can I find a way of bringing the leg up that doesn't cause me to stiffen up in the upper part of my body and to lose that alignment? So you can gradually begin to build that up. Coming back to your seated position. That was comfortable for you. Let your hands drop down, and then you sink down. You feel the push up. You push your arms out, coming around as though you're going to hold a ball against your chest, and then let your elbows drop, and hands come in. This is embrace tiger. Return to that. Coming back with this feeling of being very steady, very still. Very grounded. One more time. And then and open. Thank you, everybody. So, hope that was useful to you. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Bye for now.